Namaste to all. I would like to slightly deviate, if you permit, Professor Raju, before addressing these questions, fundamental questions, very crisply formulated. I think that we need to be absolutely aware of the challenges, because they are going to create stumbling blocks at many stages, in the short term, in the long term. And the main challenge, I think we all know it, is that the message, we keep blaming Macaulay for no good reason. We should be blaming ourselves, because we've had 75 years to correct whatever errors came from the British system. What have we done? So the problem now is twofold, is that the message of school education and higher education has been subconsciously that all useful knowledge comes from the West. This has been the implicit, unspoken message of the whole entire education system. And this is the major stumbling block that we have to face. And of course, a lot of useful knowledge comes from the West. It's not about denigrating any particular culture or part of or civilization. But therefore, we have a huge gap. We have even a gap among the scholars, because all the great scholars of Indian knowledge systems, most of them have been working during their weekends or late at night. They have rarely been able to do their work during their mainstream occupation. So this is also a problem, that there's a huge gap that we have. We have lost generations of scholarship and education in terms of Indian knowledge systems, and now we have to rebuild things, and it is not going to happen overnight. So therefore, this gap is what I think we should really be aware of. And then the problem of identifying the relevance. You see, for us to promote Indian knowledge systems, we have to be able to convince the world that given the present evolutionary crisis, as Professor Mala reminded us of Sri Aurobindo's word in the 1910s, he said mankind is now undergoing an evolutionary crisis which may threaten its very existence. Now we can see it. The environment speaks to us every day, the social crisis everywhere, the political clashes, the banking crisis, whatever it may be, it's every day the papers are full of crisis. So how do we establish that Indian knowledge systems can show alternative ways? This is what we need to identify. And there will be certain areas of Indian knowledge systems that are more obvious in this exercise. For example, of course, we all know about, we heard already many speakers speak about yoga, psychology, methods of self-development, self-fulfillment. This is definitely one major area. But then there is also the whole Indian approach to environment, techniques of water management, techniques of agriculture, which after all sustain this civilization for thousands of years. So they are not irrelevant. It's unfortunate that, again, post-independent India did not try to promote them. It's only recently that there is more talk about them, but this is not enough. Even in the fields of polity and economics, there are great lessons that the world, read Small is Beautiful by Ernst Schumacher, 1973 or 1974. It's all based on Indian thought. He calls it Buddhist economics. Okay, he worked in Myanmar, Burma, he worked a little bit in India also, and it was all about bringing back human fulfillment at the center of economics. He said, you have put, the fundamental mistake of Western economics is that we have put consumption at the center of the economic system. And this is we are going to hit a wall sometime. Of course, everybody laughed at him, 1974. And today we are seeing that this is indeed a fundamental error. He said, bring human full satisfaction, he said, and develop whatever technologies are appropriate to the real needs. And he coined this word, appropriate technology. And this was all basically Indian lines of thinking. So we have to foreground these. There are other areas, and of course, Ayurveda and healthcare has a very major contribution to make, and so on. I'll not dilate upon which areas are more obviously relevant, ultimately, all areas are relevant because even if you take, for example, ancient astronomy, it is true that no modern astronomer has any use for ancient astronomical techniques because the softwares that are used commonly by astronomers are thousands times more powerful, and they can get results instantly in much greater detail. Nevertheless, they may have to be studied at least with a broad overview, even superficially. Why? Because ultimately, we want to build in Indian students pride of the right kind. And that is another challenge. There is pride of the right kind and there is pride of the wrong kind. Pride of the wrong kind is what Professor Murthy called glorification. You have very little knowledge, you blow it up, and you say, we were the first, we were the greatest, and this leads nowhere. And we hear this still much too often in India today. So this is another challenge that we have to now, there are two extremes. Those who say we had everything, including theory of relativity and quantum physics and whatnot, and others who said we had nothing, and we were all religious, people contemplating all the time, and we achieved nothing as a. So you have these two extremes, and of course we know that the truth is in the middle somewhere. So even for that, having a broad, somewhat superficial knowledge of certain disciplines, like even astronomy, which may not be obviously relevant, is still useful because it shows you what was really achieved, and implicitly because I've been teaching some of these Indian knowledge systems for years, and I find that I never have to tell the students, be proud of your civilization. It's absolutely unnecessary. This is actually the wrong approach. Just show them what was there and make them work on it a little bit. There should be some hands-on approach. The whole pedagogy has to be very carefully worked out. It should not be taught in the way the compulsory disciplines have been taught, because then the students will run away. And the pride comes automatically, but this is pride of the right kind because it's founded on knowledge. My last point and the last challenge I want to flag is this whole very important question, which I've been mentioning in certain of our seminars, of evaluation versus validation. Now, people say we must validate Indian knowledge systems. Others say we must evaluate Indian knowledge system. Evaluation, yes, certainly, and this has been done. I think ICAR in agriculture in the 1990s evaluated a lot of recipes found in books of manuscripts of Vriksha Ayurveda for treatments of crops, and they found that about 80% of them were very useful, and some of them were neutral, they couldn't say, and a few were apparently harmful, whatever. So evaluation can be done, and it is desirable, and sometimes the very practitioners themselves, Ayurveda practitioners, will also do it, but we can consider protocols for evaluation if need be. As far as validation is concerned, I take a contrary view. Indian knowledge systems do not need any validation from modern scientific approaches because they work on a different footing. They have their own knowledge foundations. They have been proven by their very persistence through centuries and sometimes millennia. And therefore, they do not need scientific so-called validation, which, okay, once in a while may be possible, but very often will lead to undesirable, and I think I requested one slide to be ready if it can be shown, undesirable phenomena where one system ends up judging all other systems. So this is what happens in the world of education, but this is also what happens in the world of knowledge systems, where one knowledge system, supposedly scientific, says, I am above all others and I can validate other systems. Well, no, because the foundation may not be the same. For example, today, there is no scientific theory which can explain acupuncture. But everybody knows that it works spectacularly in certain cases. Water divining is an Indian traditional knowledge system referred to in ancient inscriptions. Water divining has no scientific theory behind it. In fact, scientists will laugh at it because there's absolutely nothing that can explain it. But it's a proven practice, it's a proven knowledge system. There are different methods. And water diviners were taxed. There are inscriptions which say that they have to be taxed also. Why? Because they contribute to the wealth of the economy. So therefore, we have to be very careful not to make Indian knowledge system subservient to other knowledge systems which have their own validity, and they should be allowed to function on their own foundations in their own right. So I just wanted initially to flag these challenges before we can start answering these questions.